guys, it's Gary with the BoxCast Podcast, and welcome back here to our third episode. We're so excited to have you. I am completely stoked, but first, let me get to it. Let me introduce our other co-hosts. Wade?
Hey, I'm Wade Clark, and...
My name is Josh Clemence. I'm a videographer at BoxCast.
And Wade, what do you do?
I'm a videographer. I used to work in customer support, but now I'm a videographer.
Just because Josh doesn't understand the concept, just say your name. And
I thought we would leave some... I don't know.
You just listen. You're just another pretty face at the table, pal. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, guys, I'm excited about today's episode because I have a long time, really good friend of mine, of the family. He's a special human. He's a special man, and he works for a company called PTZ Optics. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce to you Stephen Heywood. Stephen, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing well. I actually thought about just freeze framing there for a second, just to make you think that something was wrong.
Well, I mean, Zoom does have that tendency to, cut out, right?
I figured I put you through enough already in the pre-setup.
In the pre-setup stuff, yeah, I appreciate it. Well, Stephen, since you're here with us and you're from PTZ Optics, part of the things that we like to do here at BoxCast is we like to introduce all of the people that will listen to this, watch it, that are our customers who are not our customers. We like to bring in some quality experts from other companies about other things that people are using in the field. And since you're with PTZ Optics, man, we're just going to pretty much blast you with questions and let you talk about experiences and stuff. So why don't you tell me first off, man, what do you do at PTZ? Like, what is your job?
Yeah, that's a great question. I always say to my wife, I'm a glorified broadcast breaker. I get to break things. No, my title is the broadcast engineer. So my job is to work with other departments on facilitating our products, whether it's testing, if I'm working with the product team, if it's R&D, if I'm also working with the product team, marketing, finding different markets to market our cameras in different use cases, even work with potential customers that are at high level, implementing a studio or cameras in their workflow. So I work with a lot of the different departments, our sales team for training on broadcast industry equipment, working with our cameras. So I do a lot, even doing shows like this, and yeah. So I wear many hats,
awesome.
but it doesn't get better.
I was gonna say, it sounds like you do quite a bit at PTZ Optics and stuff like that. And for people who don't know, and I say it, PTZ stands for Pan, Tilt, Zoom. If you didn't know that, and there's cameras that are robotic that can do that, where they can just pan and tilt and zoom all together. There are some people who don't know that.
I can see smoke coming out of Josh's ears.
We have to say that
I thought
first.
it was just puts,
But Stephen, you piqued my interest when you said different markets you work with and stuff. Are there any markets that you work with in particular that are maybe more often than not?
I can't. Is that the technical name for the company? If puts, I can't get past that right now. Puts. Sorry. All right, go ahead. Technical stuff. My bad, pronounced. Bro. My bad. Wade, I'm sorry.
You're fine. All right, we're gonna restart here.
We're not restarting. Just go, bro.
Yeah, are there any markets you work with in particular that you either find super fascinating or that are just like the most common?
So obviously I specialize in the house of worship market because one of my other side jobs, if you will, is I'm also an assistant pastor, media director at our church. So I do work a lot with the houses of worship, and to see them kind of excel over, I also work with schools. And those two I've been working very closely. Even my local high school that my kids, go to school here in Eastern Ohio. I volunteered my time over COVID to try to get the graduation stream, different plays and things like that. And it's really interesting to see they're trying to teach broadcasting with archaic gear from like the 1980s. You just can't do that. Like, I was so taken back when I walked in there to see what they had to work with. I mean, I donated some stuff that I had that I wasn't using, and PTZ Optics was generous and got them set up with some modern cameras. But it was like, wow, like I could not believe this day and age, with live being the way it is, that they didn't have anything up to date unless they used cell phones.
Wow. So they were just like they were
easy.
They were just like straight lowballing it at that point.
It was pretty insane, man. Like, so after them seeing what we did at the graduation, it really perked their interest to see what they could do going forward. And the goal with this is, obviously, I'm volunteering my time and another guy's helping me out. is to train up the students so that they can train the next level of students that come in. So you teach the freshmen teach the next year's freshmen, and it just keeps going on and on and on. So there's a constant wheel happening, and the teacher kind of supervises. But that's the goal eventually, because it's an interesting market. It's probably one of the most interesting I worked with, and I haven't done a lot with schools in the past of things that I used to do. So just to see that, like how far back it is, and then hearing some of the things that are at the college, I'm just going, dang, man, I got more in my studio than what they're working with, and these guys are going to college for broadcasting. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
sure, man.
Could you? And I'm sorry, I'm derailing this whole interview. I'm just so curious. Could you explain that setup you used for the graduation? Like what kind of cameras and what it all plugged into? And I mean, a quick 3-minute rundown on it.
Yeah. So I just basically used a high-end i7 computer that's rack mountable with vMix Pro. I was running on it. I bought a PoE switch that I hooked up 4 PTZ Optics cameras with power over Ethernet, or PoE for those that aren't sure what that is. So basically it enables me to not use HDMI or SDI or even the power cable. I just run one cable, run it out to the cameras, and we can control it via NDI, which was made by NewTek, called Network Device Interface, which allows you to grab those cameras over the network. And I use that with an audio interface from PreSonus. Had 8 XLR inputs that we grabbed from their sound engineers that had in-house. We brought it into vMix, added graphics, we had my buddy who was controlling the cameras and making switches by, choosing whatever camera, zooming it in, panning it out, whatever you want to do with presets. And then I was switching in vMix, streaming and recording it. So I brought it in a self-contained rack. I have pictures up on my social if you ever want to check it out. So we could roll it in, plug it in, and like 20 minutes we were up and running.
Wow.
Nice.
That's awesome.
When you were talking about NDI, because I'm actually genuinely curious about this, can you set up an NDI network anywhere, or do you have to be connected to like literally the building you're in's network, or can you just create your own? Like how does that work?
I literally just bought a PoE switch, which is unmanaged. And for those that don't really know a lot about networking, you can get managed and unmanaged. And managed just basically allows you to have a lot more features with how the network is controlled. With an unmanaged network, it basically becomes a dummy switch. So basically it takes whatever IP address that you're either assigning to a camera, like a static IP, and it doesn't do anything. It just says, okay, we're just going to pass that through. So you essentially take your computer, the 4 PTZ Optics cameras or any cameras that are network attached that are NDI supported, plug it in, and the computer will see those cameras and be able to bring it in. And then one part I did miss, when we streamed it out, we used a platform called LiveView. I have a LiveView Solo. So we took the output of vMix, went into that, and that basically became the encoder to stream it live. So it made it really, really easy and robust to do it. But to answer your question, no, you don't. If you want to use like cell phones with it as wireless cameras, as we know the iPhone and Android devices can use cameras with certain apps, then you would need to bring your own router and set up.
Okay, that makes sense.
Just connect a router to it and have that broadcast a Wi-Fi signal of a local area network. That's it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for explaining that. Because like Wade and I are like we're video guys, but whenever I hear NDI, I'm like, oh, that I must need to get like an IT person involved, or I have to do some weird stuff with the network in the building. But it's good to know you can just run that by itself.
NDI is so simple to use. Like it's not made to be complex. Like you said, when you start getting into network, you automatically get sticker shock, so to speak.
Yeah.
Literally my camera right now is NDI. It's over the network. It's not SDI. All the other cameras that I use in studio are all NDI. I'm slowly making the migration over and eventually to either NDI audio or Dante audio, everything IP. It'll just make life so much easier with routing audio signals and video signals.
Stephen, so if I'm assuming correctly, you're using PTZ Optic cameras in your studio right now, right? Can you give us a quick, since you're on a switcher and everything, and we don't have to worry about controlling, can you just give us a quick rundown of like what your studio looks like right now? Because we're also going to talk about your other side gig that you do here in a little bit, and I think it's important to know. So like, are you able to to show us just a little bit of what you're running right now?
Yeah, sure. I know a lot of people, they think that I'm sitting in front of a green screen, but I'm actually not. I'm sitting in front of a TV, and I have all my computers that I use.
This is crazy.
That's dope.
nuts.
If
We
you're,
gotta do it.
if you're listening to the
Make
audio
it look so
version,
good.
go to YouTube and check this out. It's
We got to
nuts.
do this. I'm sorry. Stephen,
So-
you're hired. You're hired. That's it.
So a lot of people ask, they're like, well, why did you? I wanted them at eye level because I got tired of looking down all the time. But what I did was I bought these braces that have rubber grommets that are underneath. So because I'm using a desk mic, I didn't like if I touched the desk or the control surface, I didn't want it to send shock into my microphone. So I essentially put that all up. That's a new addition because it was driving me nuts with a desktop. I can go to an overhead shot here.
Bro,
so you
look
guys
at
can
his
see. So this is
octopus
my-
arms for his
Jeez.
laptops.
Oh my lord.
Like, are you? Is this
Yeah.
mission control? Are we
What's
in
happening?
Florida right now? Like,
Dude, that's the way we
It's a nice
roll
little-
here. You know, got to keep it good.
he's got the easy button and everything there. Look at this dude.
That looks awesome. You got the stream. Is
So-
that a stream deck too?
Yeah.
You got it. Yeah, I use
Wow.
the Stream Deck for macros. It's an extension of the TriCaster's interface. So
That's dope.
Oh wow.
the TriCaster
Oh my
interface will do like 8 inputs, but it's capable of doing 16 on that. So I have it all programmed here to do
So
certain macros.
So you've got your two. So there's two PTZ Optic cameras right there. Is that correct?
These are all PTZ Optics cameras.
Okay,
Everyone
so-
I'm showing you right
So the two that are facing you, that face you directly. What version of those are those?
now. So right now, those are the 20x zoom. Zoom that in here so you guys can see it.
Oh my gosh.
Those are the 20x zoom cameras.
Sweet. So what is and in your opinion, I think this rolls nicely into what we wanted to ask you essentially, like why do you like these cameras or prefer them so much? I mean, obviously what you're doing now by controlling them is pretty cool. You're like, let me just show you. And you can zoom in to your camera so we can get a close up view of it. Is there any, tell us about those products or like the benefits or how they perform at
Yeah,
low
man,
light.
like,
I
what's-
just hit you with 7 questions.
Yeah,
but
like what's the point in buying a PTZ Optics camera? I mean, obviously outside of controlling it because it's super sweet.
that was pretty cool.
I mean, that was dope.
Yeah.
Like he's just like,
Yeah, he's showing us the whole studio with like just touching a couple buttons. It looks
I know.
like, but
Kevin,
Well,
you're
so
out
that-
of
that
a
is-
job soon, bro. Kevin's gonna be out of a job here shortly.
Well, that is honestly the benefit is being able to control it and mounting it upside down or right side up. A lot of venues, they don't want camera operators. They don't want somebody in there because it's considered an eyesore. Like if you're at a production or it's a distraction in houses of worship and different places like that. So for my personal setup, I don't have room for a camera operator, nor do I have I wouldn't have enough people to run the cameras. So having the ability to, look at a camera and be able to control it is ideal. Each camera also has a tally light on it, so I know which camera's hot, which camera's not. We could probably get into that a little
Ooh,
bit
that's
later.
a hot
but
take. Which camera's hot? Which camera's not? Hey, we're gonna have to go back to
Think
our
we have the name
rapping
of the
days,
episode.
Steve.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to go back to our
That's
rapping
right,
days.
man. So we make a bunch of different cameras that are, all of them are NDI capable as of right now. So being able to just input that in there, the benefits being, having the tight zoom, having a ability to control it with your favorite software. Like everybody, there's a lot of people out there with OBS, vMix, Wirecast, all these softwares that everybody uses can be controlled. They can control these cameras via your traditional way of like Visca over IP, or you can do NDI, you can do, all the different protocols that have been out there. So more and more they can get into tight spaces too. Like you saw some of the different views that I've showed you guys. But one of the other cool things is that's really taken off. And this is a camera that we kind of, with our sister company, this is called the Simple Track 2. Now I'm going to be away from the microphone here for real quick.
Okay.
But I want to show you. This is how cool this is.
okay.
Shut the front door.
Okay.
I see you.
Again, if you're listening to audio, go to YouTube and see this. The camera is
Oh.
tracking him as he walks around his room.
Wait.
Does it like lock on your face somehow?
What?
Oh my god.
No, he's got a tracker built into his neck, and it's like following the
Following
tracker.
Whoa. Okay. And
Does
then he
that
just
work with
look,
mul-
wait. And then guys, notice for the video people, he just soft dissolves back into
He just
it.
soft
Yeah.
dissolved back
Just
in.
right dissolves right
Okay,
back into
that's
like,
it.
oh, it's okay,
That's
no
it,
big
no
deal.
problem. The show's over. We're done. We're done. We're
That was
gone.
pretty sick.
Dang.
So one of the things that the engineers built into this thing that's really cool is it works with macro triggers. So the TriCaster and vMix, they have the ability to set up different macros, which is essentially a bunch of commands. So for instance, like you could have a lower third up and you're at the end of your show and you want to get intimate with your audience and you walk over and the camera's tracking you. You could set up a hotspot in your studio where you put your hand or your body. And what happens is it'll trigger an HTTP command, which then triggers the macro, and it will, whatever you're programmed to do. So I have one that lowers my lower third, fades me to black, turns off my audio, runs my outro. After the outro fades to black again, stops the recording, and still keeps me muted.
What are we doing in our
Well,
lives?
We just like more work,
Well,
I guess.
So you have to automate somehow, right? So for certain things. So that's something that makes that camera special. And a lot of houses of worship have jumped on board. Schools, college professors have jumped on board with this camera after seeing what it can do. And obviously you can change the speed, but a camera operator is not going to be able to follow that good and that close because they don't know.
Just pretty much made a camera operator obsolete.
Yeah, I instantly saw the benefit. I instantly saw the benefit and thought of just people on stage.
Yeah.
Or when you said
Yeah.
professor, like that makes complete sense. Like a professor up at the front of the room and wants to walk around, wants to do whatever. They
Yeah.
can just it just follows them.
Yeah,
or
that's
like a
really-
pastor,
Shut the front door,
a
dude.
pastor on stage, like because and we've seen a lot of church streams. Like some pastors really move around and they run to side to side. You know, they go
Yeah.
crazy. So it's like that technology
Okay,
is insane. Wow.
So wait, Steven. So just to make sure, you told me before the show began you were going to send us 3 of those, right?
Yeah, I heard we were each getting one.
I heard that we
Yeah.
were each getting one, and it was courtesy of Stephen Heywood at PTZ
Yeah.
Optics.
So let me show you this too. So I'm
Oh,
going to
here
change
we
my
go.
background. I'm going to change my background to the arcade one. And the reason I want to do this is I want to show you with this motion tracking camera. A lot of people are like, okay, this is great. But what happens if something moves in front of you? Do you lose the track? So watch.
All right, he's getting up again. And he's moving, and it's still following him.
Wow.
That's
Yeah, an operator could not do that.
no, that's
not,
crazy.
Not at that tight.
I don't think so
Better
either.
shot.
No. So basically, you've pretty much made an operator obsolete with that camera. Correct. I mean, let's just be
In that specific use case, yeah, I would
Yeah.
say.
And
Well-
what's the name of that camera?
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know if we got that.
This is called the Simple Track 2, but it's spelled without the E in simple. Simple Track 2. And it's made by our, we have a sister company called HuddleCam HD. So if you go to huddlecamhd.com, you can check this out. Now, I will say this is a pricier camera, but for a lot of houses of worship, coupled even with what the product that you guys have, they can do a lot with this because you can do manual control like I was just doing with my other cameras, or you could set it to tracking. So let's imagine a house of worship, since we brought that up as an example.
Yep.
During worship, they want to leave it off of tracking. They just want to keep it centered on the stage. You could just in the software, just untick the tracking. It stays centered on the stage. After that, they can just simply hit the tracking, and it'll follow the pastor around wherever he goes.
Wow, dude, you blew our minds. We didn't
Yeah,
expect
That's
that.
I was gonna
crazy.
say-
we have to throw that on our kit
Yeah.
site like now to recommend to people.
Absolutely. So listen, if you're listening to this, and obviously you can't see it, please jump to the YouTube channel.
We'll put pictures up of it. And stuff
Yeah,
like
we'll
that,
we'll
and the
link it up
price.
in the video for you to see it. But it's called the HuddleCam HD Simple Track 2 minus the E in the word simple.
Simple.
You can look at it at huddlecamhd.com. It's on their website, and I mean, there's a bunch of videos, documentation. I think Clemence over here, Josh, was looking at the just some of the specs, and he kind of went wow when he saw those 20 times zoom at what
Yeah.
was the f-stop for
4.7,
something
I think.
4.7 and 94 millimeters. Wow, I mean that's incredible for a
Wow.
really decent camera.
And we recommend not going any further than like 65 feet with it. But I'll be honest, a couple of the churches we've kind of put it to the test. We've had it at like 100 feet, and it still looked good.
Wow.
Wow.
I would say the not only the benefit of the automation, but the cost savings that you get out of that.
Well, it should
Like,
pay for itself over
me,
time.
like there's some events where there's no budget to pay for camera ops, but you still want to make it look good and to follow the speaker instead of just setting up a medium shot in the back of the room and have it be static.
right.
Being able to throw that into the mix.
And I was going to say,
Would go a
for,
long
for us
way.
too, because I don't know how much Gary filled you in, Stephen, but Josh and I have our own video production company, and we do random projects here and there. But for us too, when you show something like that to a client and you say like, look, this will follow you as you walk around, and they see it moving, it's just like eye candy.
That's a sold.
It's
That's
like
sold.
it's like, whoa, that's so cool, like because
That
we
could grow our business.
Yeah, we
like,
just
exponentially.
we just did a job at the end of June where we used a PTZ camera, and the client was pretty pumped about it because we called it like the guy we were working with just called it like, oh, it's our robotic camera, and they were like, whoa, that's crazy,
Robotic camera.
But
Magic.
yeah, that's really really cool. I'm happy you shared that with us.
And I've used these cameras even before I worked for the company. I've been using them probably shortly after they came into being, if you will.
Yeah.
I found them and I started using them. Another camera. Do you guys use a lot of? You said you have a production company. Do you use one of those sliders that are automated? Like you can put a DSLR on it and it just moves at whatever speed that you want it to for
mean a
like
track?
Yeah,
shots?
yeah, like a Rhino slider or
Yeah.
something
Track,
like that.
yeah,
Yeah, those
right,
have
Rhino
some
slider.
PTZ. They don't come with the camera, but they have some PTZ capability in them. But
Right,
just put
so
the
what-
camera on.
We make an NDI version of a camera. This is called the EPTZ camera, and you can it has dual SDI, and the reason for that is you can tap into both lenses, the close-up lens and the distance lens,
Oh, you can
and
send both.
separate shots, at the same time. But it's also NDI capable. But this thing is built like a tank, so you can mount it upside down or you can mount it right side up. And I've used this as we'll call it a dump camera, just a camera to drop to if we have to set up other shots with the PTZ camera. And we
Mhm.
put it on a motion slider real slow just to go across at, real close to the stage.
Yeah,
These cameras are phenomenal
Wow.
for that.
I
Yeah.
have seen those before. Those
All
are
right.
really nice.
I'm sold. Okay.
Jeez.
I'd like 5 of them, please. And if you
Yeah.
could
Well,
FedEx them.
Did I answer your question, Gary?
Yeah, no, dude, you did. No, I mean, I think the thing is like people who will watch and listen to us here from BoxCast, or even watch and listen from say PTZ. People want to know what that next thing is and what's the easiest way to do it, right? Like, how do we go from having 2 people having to operate cameras on a Sunday morning to having nobody operate a camera on a
Yeah.
Sunday morning? And what makes it? Why is it beneficial and why is it expensive? Well, you just proven why it's expensive. I'm sorry. I mean, but we talked about this a few episodes ago. Like, sometimes cheap isn't always the best
Well,
route,
I would also say it's expensive at the outset, but it's saving you money over
Well,
time.
yeah,
Over
the long term.
Yeah, over
Yeah.
the long term.
But I mean, that answers the question is like, what is the benefit of not having an operator? Well, if you have a slick camera that can, zoom, tilt, and use a macro with automation, or even just track you like that, that makes all the sense for any application. I mean, we could put that towards sports. I mean, dude, you'd mount those
Right.
things up
Yes.
anywhere.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that makes sense.
Does that work for sports, Steven? Like, would that fall, or is there too much going on, or are there specific?
Believe it or not,
sports?
Believe it or not, it can track a lot faster. Like you could be standing still and just going like this, and it'll follow you. Like I have the settings
wow.
like I think out of a scale of 1 to 6, I think I have it at a 2.
Wow. So
Um,
6 being the fastest.
6 being fastest. And one of the things that I wanted to try, which I haven't done because of where my pinball table is, I wanted to fixate it on the pinball and have it bounce around and see if it tracks the pinball around the table, just to see what it's capable of doing. Because I can't mount it upside down to really get a good shot of the table, which makes it kind of difficult. But Gary, you mentioned about camera operators and not needing them. You're at a church. We went through this pandemic. We're still kind of going through it a little bit. If you have your favorite software, you can remote into the machine from home and control the camera from home.
I've seen
without
that.
needing-
I've seen
need
that. Yeah, we've talked to clients who've done that in the past, where they're like, "Yeah, we're running like 4 PTZ Optics." Generally, they're like larger Catholic churches that are doing it, and they're like, "Yeah, we've remoted in. We can we can capture the video and audio and everything just by using the remote feature." But
Well, I was gonna say, like in that situation, if you wanted to have 4 cameras, that's 5 people, 4 people running cameras, 1 person doing
Plus
the
your
switching and
producer,
stuff like
yeah.
that. But if you have all PTZ Optics, now you could do it all. I mean, you could do it all with 1 person.
You could do
if
it
you
all.
knew
You'd
what
be
you were
like,
doing.
If you became
Yeah.
like a master video DJ and you were
Yes.
just
Yeah.
you could
Wow.
actually, but you would that's the move. But you could, like, I mean,
But-
especially if you knew your services that well, and it was like pretty repeatable, and you understood, you could anticipate what was happening next, then you could get really good at it.
But before the camera operator guys, before they tune out of the show and think that we're all hating on them and saying that there's no room for camera operators, no, I still use regular cameras. I do have a Canon XA40 that I use, a 4K camera. So I use that for like B-roll and shooting things. So there's still a place for that. And even before the tracking camera, our church uses that tracking camera. We had one person manned on the camera to track the senior pastor as he was preaching. But we had PTZ cameras set up around. And then when the tracking camera came out, it was like, well, sorry, we don't need you anymore. We're going to put that up.
Right.
It's
But
just
what
how
it did was it made it easier, right? You could get less people means less mistakes.
Yeah, less room for error.
So-
Yeah, that's true.
Less
So-
people to disappoint you when they don't show up on time.
Fact. So that brings me to another question then for you then, Stephen. So in respects to less people, less errors, less mistakes, how easy is it to operate and set one of these things up, or more in that case, if you needed it as a single operator? How well can that be done?
So in the past, and this was before I worked with PTZ Optics, there's an app for Windows that you would open up, and there's even a Mac app that would search a generic IP address that was on it. Usually on the bottom of the cameras, there's an IP address, and it was a little cumbersome. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was a little cumbersome. And what they've done now, the engineers, they've done a really good job of building in DHCP, and what that essentially does is it automatically finds it onto the network so that you can alter that IP address. And the reason for doing that is you might have another device, or you might have a network set up with static IP addresses. And what static addresses, what it does to the device is it basically locks that device to a specific IP. For example, 192.168.1.3. That will never change. That's static. It stays that way. So if the camera automatically chooses that address, you want to change that. So that's where the app now, if you're on the latest firmware, you want to do that, and you can change the IP address, see it on your network, get it up and running in little to no time. Even now with our joysticks now, being able to bring in cameras via NDI, you don't have to go through the VISCA and know the port and the IP. You can bring it in through NDI, and it gives you a list of the cameras to choose from for the different camera position buttons that you want on the joystick.
Wow. So you said that you don't have to operate this using a joystick controller or any of the PTZ Optic cameras, right? You can do that through software. You said you can do it through OBS, Wirecast, vMix, right? Okay. Can you talk to me a little bit? Just give me a hint. Like, what are you're obviously using a joystick controller, right? Or are you doing that through vMix when like you're out and about doing live streaming for other organizations?
So on location, when we did the actual production for the graduation, I have a physical joystick. I have our Super Joy that we have from PTZ Optics. I use that only because when you're controlling vMix and you're switching, you need somebody else separate to be controlling those cameras. So instead of 4 or 5 camera operators, if you're using 5 cameras, now you need 1. So he's sitting there going out. And the cool thing with our joystick is it outputs to an HDMI screen. So if I go back to my over-the-shoulder shot here, you could see, and I can zoom in on that real quick so you guys can see. And you can see I'm using the joystick here to bring in the camera.
You're very
But
good at that,
what
by
I
the way.
I've been doing
Very
it a
smooth.
little bit. But you guys can see there's numbers here on the side, and I know it's a distance, but you won't see the effect.
Right.
There's 6 camera positions. So if I hit any one of these cameras, you're going to see it change on the screen here to whatever camera I'm choosing. And then I can then have control over it. So as a camera operator, all he needs is a screen in front of him with this, and he can maneuver these cameras around at will without affecting anything that I'm doing in vMix, TriCaster, Wirecast, whatever it is that I'm switching with. OBS.
That's a preview out then.
It is. There's HDMI built into it, so it gives you
Cool.
that clean.
That's actually really
so
cool.
I just-
I had no idea that was a thing, because I think the PTZ camera we used at the other event, it what to just be honest, it wasn't a PTZ Optics, but I don't think the controller had that option.
No.
Right.
because like that because we had to like run a separate feed to him
Mm-hmm.
that showed him just his one camera. But
Yeah.
that's really cool. Steven, this maybe doesn't. This is just me jumping around here a little bit, but do you recommend ever streaming like directly from the camera if it's just like a single camera shoot, or like let's rephrase, if it's like a single camera setup, do you recommend streaming directly from a PTZ Optics camera, or do you think you should still get like a software involved so you can do more, or what's your take on that?
I think it depends on your budget, honestly. If I'm going to be fair, I mean, let's say you have a church that has a $3,000 budget, and the only thing they can afford right now is a simple track, and they want to connect that to the network. Then I would say, by all means, stream right from the camera. Have that ability to do that. I mean, it's baby steps. It's a sprint, not a marathon.
Right.
So you want to go with what you have, get going, and then just build as you go on. So I don't see anything wrong at all with streaming right from the camera. We have that ability in there. We also have SRT built into it. For those that don't know, secure, reliable transport. So you can do that, exactly what you're saying.
Perfect.
When you're using like NDI connections over Ethernet, I'm just thinking like there might be some like traditional broadcast guys that are like, no, I like SDI. I'm sticking with SDI. Like, is there any
Like you?
Like, well, yeah. Like my initial thought would be, is there any disadvantage to running video over an Ethernet cable versus like an SDI cable?
So there can be, right? There could be advantages, like, and I'm not gonna lie, my cameras, 2 of them are hooked up with SDI in the event of a catastrophe. I have that ability. So, and the reason for that is because, like you guys, I'm kind of the old school mentality as well. I'm gonna see if I could do a side-by-side comparison here.
But it sounds like you can do both, and you can do SDI as backup.
Okay.
So that's at least nice, because I mean, if your cameras are close, you could run a short SDI cable. Versus you're probably not going to run like, let's run 200-foot cables, but that is nice.
Let's see if Zoom can carry the signal here, and let's see if you guys can tell the difference. I'm gonna switch between cameras, and you tell me which one's SDI and which one's NDI. So let me know when you can tell the difference of which one.
And by the way,
is NDI.
If you're listening to this, sorry, Stephen. If you're listening to this, you got to check this out on the video, because it makes so much more sense when you're seeing it. But we'll just scream into our microphone as loud as possible. SDI. Okay, all right, go ahead, go do it, Stephen.
Right. So right now, I'm sure you guys can't tell. Like this, you can't tell which one's SDI and which one's NDI.
Oh, that's totally SDI.
No, have you been switching between them?
Yeah.
I have been switching.
That's what I'm saying. I feel like you, to test us, you've probably just been switching between them, but I never even noticed you switched.
Nope, I seen it. Nope, you're totally on NDI now.
I haven't switched it. My hands but no, that's what I always show people. I'm like, okay, so if I get it, I get worried from time to time too. Like what could happen? There's always that what if.
Right.
But if you set it up and you isolate your network in the sense of, what traffic's going where, it doesn't, like I have switches set up all across my studio. Like I have a switch set up just for the gear here. So if something happens, like if all this stuff stops networking, I know the switch went bad, I can replace it. It's just my own sake. But if you know how to connect your computer to a switch or your cameras to a switch, you just plug it in. You shouldn't have any issue. And that's one of the reasons is for demonstrating things like that for non-believers with it. But I do, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with keeping an SDI connection. I already had it run through the ceiling before NDI. So obviously I'm going to use it. I'm going to, I'd be foolish not to. But I get the concern. I really do.
Yeah.
And I like the simplicity though of everything running off of one type of cable. Because even, sometimes setting this up, we're like, wait, can you get me that thing? Can you get me that thing? Like, what if everything was just one connector?
And in any situation, I mean, whether you're a house of worship, you're a sports team, you're a school, maybe even you're just a conference or some small business doing something, with conferences and webinars, simplicity is always mastered, right?
Yeah.
In these situations. So the less pain points you have to troubleshoot a situation or a scenario, the easier it is to figure out what the problem is.
Right.
I mean, that's the way it works with audio. When you're like jumping a bunch of audio jumps, you got so many different gain structures at that point. You have to figure it all out as you go. and then master one down. Where if you just go from point A to point B and not have to worry about what's in between, I mean, come on, that's a win. Like that's a total win. So I think Wade's got like one or maybe two questions, and I want to jump into your side venture here, Stephen. I want to talk more about you if we can get opportunity. To do that.
Sure. The only other question I have too, and it's more of just because I really think like someone like Josh and I are going to start to jump into this world because we're seeing the benefit.
Inevitable.
We've used it at the events. You just showed us a ton of really cool stuff. Like I could see our next camera being a PTZ camera.
I'm getting the credit card out.
Yeah, we're getting it out today. What do you recommend for like today? We're obviously recording the podcast. We have a couple cameras hooked up to our switcher and stuff. Is there an ideal like ISO recording device for any of the PTZ Optics cameras? Because I know you can't just like stick a memory card directly in it and like record like a traditional camera. Is there anything you recommend for, like, let's say we were doing a 2-camera interview and we didn't want to bring a switcher and we just wanted to record the cameras and edit it later and put the audio in later with a clap maybe because I don't have audio. I don't know how we do it, but that's my question.
Built into PTZ Optics, no. But because we support NDI, NDI tools, and I'm pulling this up, I'm looking at it here. There is a program, and I don't know if they have it still for sale or you can get it, but it was called ISO Coder, which basically allowed you to ISO record using NDI, any camera that was NDI. So if you had 12 cameras NDI, you could, as long as you had a beefy enough machine, you could ISO record those cameras. So that would be my recommendation without going into the hardware route. Now, if you want to go to a hardware route, I know Blackmagic makes some devices and you could do stuff like that. I use like an Adamus Ninja on a certain camera that I want to use ISO for in the event. Like if I'm out in the field and I'm running and gunning and I have one camera, I'll use like the Adamus Ninja just in case something happens, corrupted SD card. But yeah, ISO Coder for NDI or whatever they have it called now because they changed the names for it. Usually there's if you look at the NDI tools, you'll see there's applications to do things like that.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
That's
My
really
first thought was not like you could do it over NDI, but it's so cool that that's how you could do it. And like it's probably easier in my opinion. Like if you have 3 cameras and you can just do it on a computer and it can just record all 3 at one time.
Yeah.
That sounds super ideal to me.
I think the whole, and just to kind of close this part of our segment up for this episode is like, if you're a traditionalist, okay, where everything has to be hard ran, you're not, you're running to a switcher, you're not using a computer for a setup, that's your thing, you can still do this with a PTZ Optics camera. Mm-hmm. So like,
just wait though. You are still hardline. Just like SDI, you are still hardline using an Ethernet cable.
Right.
I just wanted to put that in.
I'm talking about not bringing it into a computer system to, if you're running 5 or 6 cameras, you need a beefy enough system with enough processing power to pull that in, to record it, and to process it out, right? Yeah. So if you're still that traditionalist where you're like, I'm not running a full rack mount unit like Steven's got for a Go. I'm just going to go ahead and throw it into an A10 Mini. Convert the crap out of the SDI or whatever. You can still do that. Like you can still do that. So if you're a traditionalist, you can totally do that. But the wave of the future is digital. It's IP based. And so with it being IP based and that whole situation, I'm glad to see that there's a camera system that's moving along in that process. So I mean, in the long and short of it, it may be expensive up front, but the cost savings could be astronomical. I'm going to invent a new word.
Astronomical is great.
Astronomical is a great word. It's going to be astronomical and astronomical in comparison to having to pay operators or having to pay a setup or, these things are obviously not bulky. Like you could probably pack this in some sort of like, Pelican case real fast with some good foam and roll,
Yeah. And this is probably just what you said there. This is just a shout out to a guy named Jason's Cases, I believe. He makes like custom cases for like PTZ and like all sorts of stuff. They're super nice, and they're not that expensive.
Not that expensive.
That's our buddy got like 3 PTZ cameras in one case, custom, fits his controller, all that stuff. Wow. It was like $700, but it was awesome. So anyway, let's go to the next thing.
Like I said, with all to say on that, man, Stephen, we're grateful for you. The broadcast engineer at PTZ Optics, my friends and family, appreciate it. We're grateful for the fact that you showed us around that. You really blew our minds with that. With the simple track.
I'm so glad you like did that on the show because I was like, what? What is this?
You should have seen Josh's eyes. Like they went to the size of like dinner plates when you did that. It was great. So So Stephen, I've known you for quite a long time. We've been really good friends. And I remember back in the day when Ustream was like one of the only companies out there, or only organizations out there that were doing any sort of live streaming on the internet. And I remember you jumping into that in your tiny little apartment, and I coming over and I seeing how you're doing that. And then I went back to college and started doing it myself. And that was kind of like my introduction into live streaming. And you have taken that exact thing and you have crafted it into something. I don't know if you want to call it a monster or if you want to call it like, I don't know, like your golden kingdom, you know, but I mean, I remember like watching you on this organization that you created called the Tech Buzz. And now you have no limit. I'm sorry, what is it? No limit outdoors.
No boundaries outdoors.
No boundaries outdoors. That's right. And then now you've got this arcade show that you're doing as well, because I know you're like a retro gamer. Yeah, the Retro Buzz. And I watch these from time to time, and it's just astounding the level and creativity that you've come up with. Talk to me about this, man. What is this network that you built, and how in the world did you do it? Like, I want to know more.
You know, I ask myself that every day. Honestly, like you said about creating a monster, it depends on who you ask.
Well, Marty McPherson would probably say it's a monster, I would say.
Yeah. So when I got started, I was doing tech, and you know, everybody and their mother was doing tech. And to make a long story short, I ended up getting out of tech because of that, and broadcasting, because of I was doing that medium to get my message out. You know, back in the day, like 15 years ago, I had to cobble everything together to make it work. Like screen sharing. I would take any computer that somebody was getting rid of, the old Pentium 4s when we were on like dual core computers, and people are like, well, what do you want them for? And I'm like, they're Skype machines. These are great. You know, buying cheap SD capture card to bring in Skype guests. And I'd have 4 separate machines to run Skype. And, you know, I basically just, you know, did my passion, and I went on and talked to the audience. And that was something that, as Gary pointed out, on Ustream was dirty. People would just go on and dictate. They would not communicate. And so that was something that I wanted to do. I wanted to go on there and be the most engaging show that they possibly could have. And in that, it built a community, because people knew that I was into computers and I was going to teach them or answer questions about it. But when I got to broadcasting, I wanted to take that same route. And so I did that for many years. A broadcasting show called Broadcast Now went on a hiatus for 5 years, and we just brought that show back with new hosts to help people, especially going through the pandemic. I thought, you know, this is a show that needs to be here. There's no other shows out there. There might be 1 or 2 that are teaching people from the ground up what to do, what not to do, learn from the mistakes that I made, so that you can skip all the aggravation that I went through. And so you talk about like no boundaries in the gaming show, like all that stuff just happened by accident. It was just a passion that I had, and I saw a need, and companies like latched on. They were like, wow, you can do that kind of video. And in the outdoor space, they were like, wow, you can do like TV quality video. We don't have to pay $100,000, you know, to do that for coverage or for a live show. You can do it right from your home. That's incredible, with multiple cameras, bringing us in from a remote location, TV quality. And so it was just a way that, you know, working with those within these industries, it's a way to kind of fund my passions, to where it's stuff I'd have to buy anyway. So if they're like, yeah, we'll throw you this product if you're going to do these reviews and commercials and things like that. So I'm like, yeah, you know, it's a win-win for everybody. And the same thing happened with the gaming space. It was something that I could share with my kids. And, they got into the stuff that we grew up with, you know, the original Mortal Kombats, the Space Invaders, you know, and Pac-Man, all these
Double Dragons.
Exactly.
Yep, I remember.
So it's a great opportunity. So what happened was that, again, the companies latched on, not because of my video game knowledge. It was a latch on because of the quality that I was putting out in a live show.
Right.
So,
and yeah. I've watched several. I mean, I've even partaked.
You were co-host.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was a co-host for several months.
Yeah.
When I was doing some ministry stuff back in the day, but yeah. So let me ask you a question, and you can elaborate on this or as little as you want. as we come into the close of our show and everything, I just want to focus on you. When you do these kind of shows, like, what are your viewership like? Like, how are you getting people to watch?
My viewership can range, man. It can range from like my Roku channel, which I've had for many years, has over 50,000 subscribers to it. Now, before everybody's like, wow, 50,000. That doesn't mean all 50,000 are watching. I mean, even if a tenth of them are watching, at any given moment. I'll be honest, I don't put a lot of emphasis on viewership at this point. I'm more focused on the content. I'm more focused on building community. So I focus on the people that actually show up to comment. And if it's 10 people that actually show up to comment, then that's who I focus on. Not to say that the people that are watching later aren't important, but for me, engagement is key. And so I find out later, because I'll get emails from people I've never heard of. I've never even seen them in the chat room saying, hey, that was a great show. Or, you watch your viewership numbers go up in your podcast downloads and things like that. So I think that if you're a content creator, if you're doing a podcast show, whether it's for business or not, focus on your content, focus on your audience, and the views come later. That should be your most important, because if you get wrapped up following the viewership and being like, oh, look at me, you get an ego right away. And that gets in the way of creativity. And I always tell people, like, I go back and watch stuff that I did 10 years ago. And it's awful. It's the most awful stuff I've ever seen on the internet.
No, it totally is awful. I can tell you that straight up.
See, he knows. But what it does is it brings you back down the planet Earth and humbles you, and makes you understand that, yeah, you've come a ways, but you've also come a ways because of your audience. And if you do that and you have reminders in your studio of that, it makes you a better person. It makes you a better content creator, because then your focus is not about you. It's about the content you're delivering to the viewer that's taking the time to watch you, setting that scheduled time aside every week to see you sit in front of a camera and act like a bumbling idiot. In some cases, that's but that's the truth. I mean, you're nothing without your audience. And I always say to people, I'm like, wow, because they'll be like, wow, that's 50,000. That's a lot. I'm like, yeah, but in the grand scheme of the world, 50,000 people is just a tiny, tiny little mustard seed in the whole population. You're not going to walk out in the grocery store and somebody be like, hey, it's Steve from the Tech Buzz. You're going to be like, who are you?
Right.
So
I feel like that's what they're doing with us right now, is they're like, oh, who's this, Josh, Gary, Wade, who are these guys? Well, we're just guys.
Yeah.
The only people that know you is like if you go to NAB that have watched you, in that industry, or and they come up. I'll be honest, I've had some international people at NAB come up and want like autographs and pictures. That was weird. That was really weird to me, because like they were afraid to come to me. And my wife is like, because she's standing there, and because I was interviewing somebody, and they're like, can we talk to him? We watch a show. We'd like a picture with him. And she's like, yeah, you can go up and talk to him. And they're like, oh, really? Like, I don't know if that's just the stigmata that content creators put off, but I stood there they thought it was like the greatest thing. And I'm just like, guys, I put my pants on one leg at a time, just like everybody else.
Wow.
Regular dude,
I'm going to
that was kind of weird.
Autograph. I'm asking for your autograph next time I go to NAB.
Don't do that. That's just weird, man.
I don't know about you, but I actually put my pants both legs on at the same time. So that's also because I can't touch the floor.
That explains the lump on your head.
Oh,
it explains the lump on your head when you fell over.
Thanks, Stephen. Well, I think we got time for maybe one more question.
I've got one. And then, sorry, Josh, if I'm taking over from you.
No, go for it.
It sounds like, Stephen, which is awesome to hear. It sounds like you found topics that you are obviously extremely passionate about, and you're doing them, again, not for the viewership, not for, oh, I'm trying to be famous. You're just doing them because you genuinely care about them. You want to build a community around that topic or that thing, so you can just connect with people that are also like-minded. I guess the question is, for someone who maybe hasn't started that venture yet, or hasn't began their, let's call it, I don't want to call it a channel, but just began making videos or maybe a blog or something. Do you have like one or two tips for them? Just being like, hey, here's what I would start doing if you're super passionate about something and you want to get that out there and connect with people.
Don't talk about it. do it.
Love it.
I see too many people talking about, oh, I'm going to do this, or I want to do this, or I should do this. Don't talk about it. Do it. You have one of these things. For those watching, I'm holding up a cell phone. You have one of these things. There's no excuse. It has a microphone and a camera. Just do us all a favor and turn it.
Yes,
landscape.
Yes.
Thank you.
Do the landscape. We're not doing portrait video. Landscape. Okay. Now that that's out of the way, do it. Get on your favorite platform. I don't care if it's TikTok. I told a buddy of mine who's like, man, I'd love to do what you do. He's like, I just don't have the money to build the studio. And I'm like, who said you need to build a studio like me? I'm like, if somebody said to me, somebody said before to me, they said, if you had all this gear 15 years ago, wouldn't you be in a much better place? And I'm like, no, because I wouldn't have learned the ins and outs of cameras and audios and mixers and all the stuff, cobbling things together. I wouldn't trade it for the world, but my setup would have been a lot different than what it is today, because the tools that are at everybody's fingertips are astounding from what they were 15 years ago. You can get a ring light now, even at Walmart, because of the Snapchat era and TikTok era, for $20. Throw your phone in that. You have good lighting. You got a good camera. You got good audio. Get out there and make some content. Stop making excuses. Otherwise, nobody cares.
You hear that, Josh?
Yeah.
I love that.
Stop making
I get it.
excuses, Josh.
I don't have an excuse.
I absolutely love that. Thank you. That was a great answer.
That was a great answer. Steve, we really appreciate your time. We appreciate you coming on here, man. And we'd love to have you again sometime, but we would also like to get the viewers and listeners to know, man, how can people look for your stuff? Where can they find it? What's the website? YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok? What are you using right now? Where can they get to you?
Pretty much you can go to the techbuzz.net or search the Tech Buzz. I'm pretty much anywhere. You can email me, steve@thetechbuzz.net. Again, I'm all about giving. So if people have questions about broadcasting and they need, that's the whole premise behind the show that I do, is to give back to the community that's given to me over all the years. And that's the premise of the show. And who knows, we might use your question on the show as content. So,
I got to sign a release form first, pal.
Okay, you do that.
So
we finally released him?
right. Yeah. Well, that's how it works. So the techbuzz.net and anything related to social media would be the same thing, right?
Yep.
Cool. Yep. Awesome. Again, Steve Heywood with the techbuzz.net, with PTZ Optics, with No Boundaries Outdoors, and of course the Retro Arcade. It's been fun having you, buddy. I'm so glad I got to see you. Maybe next time we do this, we get you in person. How's that sound?
Oh, that sounds great. I think that'd be fun.
Awesome.
But that would be 3-on-1 though. I don't know if that'd be good.
No, we're gonna kick Clemence out.
I'll just leave.
We're gonna put our producer Kevin in the middle instead. He's gonna jump in instead. We'll make Josh switch. So awesome. Well, again, hang on for me, Steve. But man, awesome, man. Just an awesome interview. I am so glad that we got to have him on, and really enlightening too. That simple track cam. What?
That's nuts.
Yeah, you blew our mind. I mean, again, for people listening, go to YouTube and watch it if you can, because like your studio, to the simple track. I mean, just your whole command center is like a dream.
Ridiculous.
Is a dream,
cool.
but
like a spaceship.
I do agree with you. If I had your basement right now, I would not know what to do with it. You got to learn it first, kind of have to.
You have to learn to do the simple stuff first, and then you can get complicated over time.
Yeah,
but if, like he said, if he would have started with all of that, he'd be too overwhelmed to even get anywhere.
Right, exactly. Wow, man, awesome episode, guys. It's been a pleasure again to be a part of this, and we're super excited to continue, and we hope that you guys enjoyed this as well. You can check out the BoxCast podcast on all of the current streaming podcast services: iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, and Google, the top 4 at least. More coming as we go through. We'd love to be able to communicate with you. You can contact us at questions@boxcast.com. Listen, if you've not had an opportunity to live stream whatsoever, and any opportunity, Stephen made a great point there. Start with your phone. BoxCast has a great way to do that. We can offer you the Go plan. It's a free plan where you're able to stream up to 180 minutes a month. That's 3 hours in a month. All you have to do is use your phone. You can download the Broadcaster app today. Go to boxcast.com/Go plan and learn that today. Guys, it's been a pleasure.
It's been fun.
Been a great time.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, thank you again, Stephen. Thank you again, Sure and BoxCast. I'm Gary with the BoxCast Podcast.
And I'm Wade.
I'm Josh.
And we appreciate it. Have a great day. Bye, guys.